Well, if you weren't relying on your attorneys for advice, you didn't respect them, then who really did call the shots there? Whose advice were you actually following? Does that mean your communication should actually still be privileged then because you didn't actually follow it? Are they now free to testify about the advice you didn't take or even listen to? And if you don't respect them, should they still now feel loyal to you? Let's talk about all with that litigation attorney A. Scott Bolden and also Jamil Jaffer, a former associate White House counsel to President George W. Bush. Gentlemen, I mean, think about this, right? We know we never want our clients to be talking in front of the camera without us side by side, or if ever. He essentially maybe gave the keys to the prosecutorial castle in some ways. If you were wondering whether Trump was the one to direct something, he said he calls the shots here. So you got to wonder, how does that bode with his advice of counsel defense? What are your thoughts?
He walks away from it, but I imagine while I listened to that interview, what his lawyers were watching and saying, oops, there goes the defense, and that is relying on counsel, despite what the program that you ran. He is a walking admission against your interest machine. I just don't, his campaign is his criminal cases, and his criminal cases are his campaign. And as a result, they are inconsistent with one another. He can raise money and run for office, but the criminal justice system is going to dominate this and going to drive this, which is why every time he talks about his case, he may be able to raise money, but I think he's making party admissions. I think you can get those party admissions in through a hearsay exception, including we're not arguing that for the truth of the matter asserted therein. I'm arguing that the fact that he said this, and the prosecution may be able to get that on their direct case, but certainly on their rebuttal case.
Love it when you talk professorial. It's like I'm in law school all over again. I love it. But, you know, it's a little bit more nuanced as well, right? Because what his lawyers may be saying is, well, he didn't respect all of the attorneys. He was talking about this one. He was talking about the constitutional memo, and that's where he really had the rubber meeting the road. Is that enough to say, look, I didn't believe the rest of you, but then I found that diamond in the rough. I found that one lawyer who I said, you got something, kid. I'll listen to you. Is that enough?
I mean, that's what it looks like he's trying to say. Look, I didn't listen to any of the rhino lawyers, any of those Bush administration retreads, who I happened to bring in, who I made my attorney general or the like. No, I relied on John Eastman, this vaunted constitutional scholar that he is. That's the guy I relied on. Oh, and I also relied on the head of my civil division, who I was going to make the acting attorney general until everybody told me they were going to quit if I listened to him. So those were the two guys I was listening to. Everyone else, forget them. They're a bunch of rhinos and know-nothing lawyers who I'm never going to listen to.
And they're indicted right now, too.
And they're indicted.
I mean, we have to learn the art of the pivot, right? You're going to have to make arguments in court. Sometimes the judge is going to look at you and say, I don't buy it. And you got to have something prepared to pivot to. A jury, you may have a juror who's looking at you with a bit of a side eye. You have to pivot accordingly. How do the lawyers pivot here? How do they do it in a way that preserves the ability to make a valid defense? Because everyone is entitled to a defense, even Donald Trump. You have to have one, be able to have lawyers who will do it. How do you pivot?
Well, I think you make the argument that you just made, that he did listen to Eastman, he did listen to these scholars, and of course he was interviewing lawyers back and forth, and he liked some, he didn't like others. But this admission on his part is even more powerful because he's owning the criminal conspiracy. He's owning the political criminal organization, right? He's charged with RICO, right? In that interview, he just owned it.
Well,
he said, I'm the lead of it.
I don't want to cut you off. That's a good point because we're talking about 4 different indictments, right? Obviously, 2 have to do with the very topic you're talking about. Is it immediately clear that he means the Georgia case versus January 6th and beyond? I mean, he could likely make an argument, I'm sure, to suggest that this was more of an ambiguous statement.
Yeah, but the federal case is the January 6th piece, and then the state case, in many respects, is maybe the local state case, but they're very comparable. One's being the RICO case and speaking indictment. The January 6th federal case by Jack Smith is not so, but they're very comparable, and if you think about it, they're partner cases. This happened at the state level, which was part of their conspiracy, and at the federal level, that was the broader piece where they were trying to get Pence to not do his constitutional duty. And so I think you got to look at them through one legal prism, and his statements and him owning being the political crime boss as he did in that interview, that's detrimental to the federal case as well as the state case, if you ask me.
Well, I think she missed an opportunity to ask who ordered the code red. There could have been a whole few good men moment that happened. You all know we wait for it as lawyers to have that moment. But it's not a comparable case, although it's being made to feel like that in a lot of the talking points and conversations in this so-called two-tiered justice system as relates to Donald Trump. That's Hunter Biden, of course, right? He, of course, has indictments right now. There are three very different contexts, Jamil. But he is now suing the IRS because he says that the whistleblowers essentially, or the IRS, failed to protect his private records and the agents illegally released tax information. He's looking for $1,000 for each disclosure and attorney's fees. When you hear this, does he have a case?
I mean, I don't think so. Look, he's throwing a lot of sand in the gears. It's true that tax information came out, but they reported it to Congress. It was Congress, it was the committee that released their testimony that outed this whole thing. They were going through the process saying, we don't think things are happening properly at the IRS. This was the legally and appropriate route for them to follow. It's not
as whistleblowers, you're saying.
The whistleblower is exactly right, and not appropriate then for them to be sued as a result of that. This will be a contested case, but in a lot of ways, this is Hunter Biden throwing sand into the gears, saying, look, I didn't think I was going to get indicted. Now I'm indicted. What can I do to confuse the situation? It's very much a Donald Trump move.
Well, the whistleblowers themselves are not named as defendants in this action, likely for the reasons you're talking about, the protection there. But I wonder, just because you gave it to Congress, if you were supposed to disclose it in the first place, I don't know if it's going to save you forever, but I will say, when you think about the reasons for doing this, is it because he's trying to cloud the issue and he's trying to muck it up?
Not going to cloud the issue. He's going on the offensive, if you will. If the IRS is going to do what they're going to do and work with the DOJ prosecutors or special prosecutor, then we're going to give IRS something to chew on. I'm going to sue you for violating this privacy law that says you can't disclose this stuff. Now, on the other hand, you have the IRS protocols and DOJ protocols. Before they disclosed it to Congress under this subpoena or under this letter that they were submitting to, they had to know that they were protected, and it had to be cleared by the IRS. But Abby Lowell is a really aggressive white-collar criminal defense lawyer, commercial litigator, and he's going to fight to the very end. He's going to give Hunter Biden every bit of a fight that he needs, deserves, and can afford.
Best defense is offense, they say. Or is it the
parallel
reverse?
Proceedings.
There you go. Well, Scott Bolden, Jamil Jaffer, thank you so much to both of you. And coming up, President Biden tonight touting his experience as a rebuttal to all the many questions about his age. The question is, though, what do voters think? Well, California Governor Gavin Newsom weighs in. A CNN exclusive interview with our own Dana Bash.